In an age where warfare dominated the lands, the sounds of swords clashing left and right, and castles and caravans constantly being raided, it was no doubt that an order was necessary. An order that was just as militant, but fair and just. An order that was to be feared by the enemy, but respected nonetheless. An order that drew steel of swords to feed on blood, but stayed faithful to the Lord. Bernard of Clairvaux dreamt of that order, and Hugh of Pains would make it come true. At first, King Baldwin II rejected Hugh's offer to make a new military order and suggested to take this request to the Pope, but after realizing that he would need additional troops for an assault on Damascus, he reconsidered Hugh's offer and would only grant Hugh's request if he helped him. A little fun fact to know, it's thought that the Templars started with 9 members, but this was misinterpreted as the order begun with only 5 members. These members were Godfrey of Saint-Omer, Roland, Payen of Montdidier, Geoffrey Bissel, and Archibald of Saint-Amand, and it's thanks to these 5 people that Hugh was able to give a good impression to the king to start the Knights Templar. So imagine having the goal to create an expansive military order with only 5 people. It is truly impressive and astounding how the Templars first started. After the success of the Battle of Damascus, King Baldwin II finally granted permission for Hugh to recruit more members to his order, seeing the potential it had for the Crusades, and it was this day forward that everyone would know of the Knights Templar. Hugh started building his army, convincing people to join with the promise of wealth and riches. At first, Templar headquarters were nothing but a small house, and only through successful deeds from the church were they able to upgrade it. But the Templars, even back then when they were smaller in numbers, didn't care much for money or materialistic wealth rather than validation from the Pope himself for their legitimacy, not only to the church but to God. To express how righteous they were to the church and God, they needed a motto, and that motto was Non nobis Domine, non nobis, sed nomini tu da gloria, meaning, not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name give the glory. This motto is what actually made the Templars so unique at the time, in an age where people became knights to express their strength, courage, honor, and glory, to wear that shining armor to impress their family and friends, to fight in battle so that their names can be remembered. Soldiers who joined the Knights Templar joined only for the glory of God, nothing else. To fight in battle was for God, to clash steel with the enemy was for God, and to be a knight overall was for God. Along with the motto came a 68-point code of Templar conduct, later known as a primitive or Latin rule. This conduct explained how exactly a knight was selected and received, how they prayed, how and what they ate, their dress code, their sleep schedule, their behavior with the general public, and who they were allowed to socialize with. The rule also claimed that this religious order has flourished and revitalized the order of knighthood, praising those who joined the Templars were only willing to offer up their souls to God and for salvation and spread of true faith. Once again, going back to the motto where people join the Templars to become knights, not for self-satisfaction or validation from others, but for God and no one else. Another goal Bernard and Hugh tried to accomplish in the years to come was the image of the Templars. They didn't want the Templars to be like other knights and intimidate the peasants with their shining armor, rather than show the common folk that they were their protectors and they would vanquish any evil that terrorized them. This new code of the Templars bore an unmistakable stamp of Bernard's personal belief that knighthood could and should be reformed, Christianized, stripped of its earthly vanity, and transformed into a calling of dignity, duty, and godly purpose. Because the Templars would be busy spending the day as soldiers patrolling or fighting in the battlefield, there needed to be a new rule in place so that Templars could still devote themselves to praying. The rule itself allowed a brother to substitute each daily church service that he missed for a set number of repetitions of the Lord's Prayer. This rule also created 2 categories of knights, those who signed up for life, being the knights that fight, and those who agreed to join temporarily, being the substitutes, although they had the right to fight as well. To make the Templars stand out from other knights, their uniforms consisted of nearly all white clothing, which is supposed to signify purity and chastity, though later, in 1139, they would add the giant red cross that would be placed on their chestpiece. Lower ranked Templars, however, would wear black or brown clothing to signify that they were still part of the order, but did not carry the full rank of Templar Knight. Templar dress code was strict, as the rule restricted any clothing with unnecessary accessories such as bright colors, jewelry, or ornaments. They also restricted the wear of fur capes or decorative shoes, as these pieces were often worn by pagans. Weapons and saddles had a strict code as well, for the weapon of a Templar is not to be decorative with anything, as well as the saddle, meaning no gold, silver, or any type of jewelry attached to it. Templars also needed to have their hair cut regularly, and their beards styled to prevent the Templar from looking barbaric. Life within a Templar household provided just as much discipline as out in the battlefield. Meals were required to be eaten in silence. Reading was only to be from the Bible. Food was distributed equally to each brother, and meat was served specifically to those who were fighting the most. When it came to killing, the rule stated that as long as the enemy wasn't a follower of God, let's say a pagan for example, or an enemy of the Virgin Mary, then killing them would be an act of worthy divine praise and not damnation. Hunting was limited to Templars as well, as they were not allowed to kill hawks or dogs, but mountain lions that scourged the Holy Land. Hunting with regular hunters was forbidden, as well as it only made sense for Templars to stick together in the wilderness and did not want the Templars to goof off with new friends rather than hunt and bring back the food to the monastery. The rule that was the harshest was the company of women, as the rule states that being with a woman leads a man away from the straight path and into paradise, and the flower of chastity is always to be maintained among men. For this reason, the order did not allow men to marry or even kiss a woman unless they were already married. However, married knights were not allowed to wear the white cloak, and wives could not live with their husbands in Templar houses. Finally, the order would be ruled by a master who was to give the knights the wisest and most beneficial advice. Obedience to the master's commands were essential, and once orders were given, they were to be carried out as though Christ himself had commanded it. It was in the master's power to recruit new people to the order, provide them weapons and armor, and punish those who broke the rule. And that's how the life of a Templar usually went. To be a Templar, you definitely needed discipline, but not only that, you needed to stay faithful to God and the church. You also needed to be aware of what you did outside of the Templar house, how you interacted with others, how you dressed and ate, and how you needed to be chivalrous of knighthood, not to yourself, but to God. It was with these rules that the Templars became the fiercest warriors during the Crusades, as the glory of God is what motivated them to step into battle, sword in hand, and to be ready to strike at the enemy, all in the name of God.